Normally, one family had a miner. There would be one miner at least in the family. So you always had your free coal, which meant you had one warm room.
Dad was a miner, so he got his coal as part of his wage.
I was brought up to a mining family.
My dad was a miner.
I don't think we were ever hard up for fuel because as a pitman you got your free fuel.
Fuel wasn't a problem. It was there, it was delivered to your door, you shoveled it in, fire on all day, all into the night.
You know, it was just a huge black thing at the one end of the sitting room, kitchen. But one of the undying memories I have is Mum used to bake a run bread, and it was there proving in front of the fire, and then she'd put it in the oven, and the smell was just tremendous.
Adjacent to the sink was a coal bunker, and that's where the coal man dropped the coal for you, and where you got your coal from. It actually doubled up as a drainer. We had a coal fire, obviously. That was the only heating we had.
You heated one room. When you stepped into the hallway to go to bed, it was freezing.
Come bedtime, would be bathed in front of the fire in the tin bath. Of course, huddled up because you were cold.
We didn't have any hot water or inside toilet or bath, so it was a fire with what you cooked on and made toast in a tin bath, and I think that was the same. I think I was 16 before I ever moved to a house with a bath and everything in.
I can remember the big tin baths on the outside, hanging up outside the wall, and I think apart from getting a wash down through the week standing in the baby bath, we used to get a bath in front of the fire once a week on a Sunday, and we're hair washed all in the same water.
Once a week. Mm-hmm. Just had to have what we called an uppy downy. Get washed every night and own another uppy downy.
We had a hot water boiler. It was called a geyser, but I think that was the brand name, and actually supplied the hot water by the kitchen sink, so you could get your tin bath filled up from there quite easily, and then it was in front of the coal fire to have your bath. Nice and cosy, as we thought then.
I can remember you would go in the bath. I had a bath with my sister, because you old bath, you shared the bath water. We got in the bath together, but you would wrap the towel around you, run down the stairs, and get dried in front of the fire.
The bedroom's totally unheated, and we used to have a lot of blankets. It was very cold.
The bed was about 4 foot high, because by the time you had the bed, the frame the springs, the mattress, you had all your blankets, and you had this beautiful sateen quilt on the top, and sometimes there would be a candlewick bedspread beneath that. So that's how I can remember the beds being.
We'd share the bed. I had 2 brothers. In the winter, we'd all get in the same bed. We had plenty of bedrooms, plenty of beds, but it was warmer all together. So we'd be top to toe. The 2 boys would sleep at the top, the 2 girls would sleep at the bottom. No quilts then, it was all blankets, sheets and blankets, maybe a coat thrown over, an old carpet, you know, the clippy mats.
I remember my grandmother heating a brick up in a blanket and putting it into a bed.
But it used to be freezing, and once you got in that bed, you didn't move till the next morning. And of course, the 3 we used to huddle together. That was a good warmth there.
But you didn't want to get out in the morning, you didn't want to get out. And you would get up and you would grab your clothes, hand would go out, grab your clothes, and you'd stay in bed and get ready in bed so that when you were ready, it wasn't as cold when you got out.
The first house we had at Ashington had an outside toilet. And so, you know, stepping out there in the winter to go to the toilet was rather, it was a bit nippy.
Oh God, that was terrible. And of course, you didn't have toilet roll, you had a newspaper, didn't you?
And the toilet was across the yard. And I mean, you used to wait till the last minute. You didn't just think, oh, I need the loo. You would think, God, I'm not going out there. So you would wait as long as you could before you went over to the loo. And then you'd run across and it would be perishing.
And then I used to go and I would sit on my hands, and then I used to think to myself, well, I'm moving my hands to get the toilet paper.
Usually late at night somebody would have to go with you, because if people were coming home from the club they would just go into any toilet.
The house was always freezing in sunshine, rain or snow. The doors and windows rattled in the wind. Bedrooms were for sleeping in, the front room rarely used, as everyone stayed in the living room. With overcoats and blankets and a warm brick for the bed, we'd cuddle close at bedtime just to sleep. In the morning we would jump up, get dressed and run downstairs to the fire waiting in the living room, where the big iron range, standing like a coalface, hot as any furnace, kept us warm, where quarrels were forgotten and conflict was resolved. The family seemed closer in those days. In a range there was an oven with storage space inside, and hot plates on the fire burning coal. Mum was always cooking stews and baking up some bread, and wondrous smells would fill the living room. We'd all sit down together to eat the evening meal, just grateful for the dishes that were served. On weekends we had sponge cake and pastries of all kinds. These happy memories always come to mind. Where the big iron range, standing like a coal face, hot as any furnace, kept us warm. Where quarrels were forgotten and conflict was resolved, the family seemed closer in those days. Once a week a tin bath was filled before the fire. We took turns till every child was clean. On other days a face cloth and mother's scrubbing hand, she'd tut and ask the question, where have you been? We had an outside toilet at the bottom of the yard, with bare brick walls, a latch upon the door. When it's always dark and cold inside, your visits aren't much fun. Sat there by yourself with a chilly bone. Where the big iron range, standing like a coal face, hot as any furnace, kept us warm. Where quarrels were forgotten and conflict was resolved, the family seemed closer in those days.
My two grandmothers had both been widowed in their 40s. So my dad used to try and help them, you know, so it was a case of going seeking sea coal down at Laggin Behind and giving them some coal and things like that.
During the miners' strike, I used to take the car and go down to Newbigin and Linemouth and pick sea coal, fill it in a bag, bring it home, and of course put it on the fire, and it was banging and spitting and sparks flying. So you always had to have a very fine mesh fire guard in front of it, otherwise you were in big trouble.
I met people on benefits, all kinds of rebates, people who were genuinely hard up, and they were using coal, and they would rob Peter to pay Paul. It's part of my, part of my job and benefits, that sort of thing. And I saw it all my life. People who genuinely still have nothing.
And I get people on the phone on a regular basis saying, I'm struggling to pay my bills. I need to, find some way of paying for my energy. My boiler's broken down. I can't get people to understand, the need for it to be repaired, and I don't have the money.
I think I pay an extortionate amount. I've recently rang the company because I pay jointly for my fuel, and I rang up to get the best deal with this company, but my payments haven't changed.
Sometimes you wonder if it's a bit of a stigma. They're ashamed to say that they're not coping at their time of life, but then, they've probably had a hard life. They've lived through sometimes 2 wars and brought up families, and they've been left perhaps on their own with no close relatives or friends, and it must be very hard for them to actually get in touch with strangers and say, I need help.
Julie is a single mum who ended on the skids. She had to choose between her job and looking to her kids. A part-time job would pay her less, but lack of money caused the stress. She needed help when she was broke and took up with some dodgy bloke. All the good old days never went away. People freezing in their homes because they couldn't pay. Modern life is hard when you use a card. Will there be hot water in the morning? Bob's a lonely widower, a pension from the state is all he has to keep him warm and put food on his plate. A labourer for 50 years recently began to fear. He felt his life had lost control and pressure starts to take its toll. All the good old days never went away. People freezing in their homes because they couldn't pay. Modern life is hard when you use a card. Will there be hot water in the morning? Lindsay ran away from home just earlier this year. She found a flat and by the time the bruising disappeared. She keeps a job on 0 hours. The landlord threats to cut her pay. He wants her out, oh he can make more money from the welfare state. All the good old days never went away. People freezing in their homes because they couldn't pay. Modern life is hard when you use a card. Will there be hot water in the morning? All the energy companies will say they understand. They tell you that their tariffs are the best in all the land. But cost of energy is high, maintaining energy supply, so they're all quick to explain we put the prices up again. All the good old days never went away. People freezing in their homes because they couldn't pay. Modern life is hard when you use a card. Will there be hot water in the morning? Bob's condition went downhill, he had a heart attack. Lindsay lost her bed sit and then she got the sack. Julie's in a safe house, lives each day from hand to mouth. If she complains or makes a sound, the social services come around. All the good old days never went away. People freezing in their homes because they couldn't pay. Modern life is hard when you use a card. Will there be hot water in the morning?
There was Scotswood Road right along, and then there was what they called the battlefield area, that's at Shield Field. And then there was High Walker and Low Walker. And they were the chronically overcrowded areas of Newcastle. The houses were unbelievably bad. And the desire of the people to get out of them was so overwhelming. Now that was the reality of that community. And the people begged and pleaded to get out. If you talk to some of them now, I've talked to some of the very people that nostalgically have gone back and lived in the flats. They dream of it differently. The people that lived there had the highest incidence of illness, of crime. Not a single one of them passed the 11 plus in 1956 of any river school from West Walker right along to Cruddas Park. Not a single youngster passed the 11 plus. They were the victims, if you like. So all the talk about the community, that was its reality.
We'll castles in the air. And here we are, not a friend here to meet, no cup of tea together, just noise beneath our feet. Our hopes were high and the stakes were low. We had no choice but to go. It's not like home, these windy walkways to an endless stair, to our cold castles, castles in the air. This brutal grey facade, concrete up, concrete down, its solid flat slab rooftop, cold comfort for a crown. Our hopes were high and the stakes were low. We had no choice but to go. It's not like home, these windy walkways to an endless stair, to our cold castles, castles in the air. The walls are always cold and we yearn for some heat, by a spitting coal fire in our best outside seat. Our hopes were high and the stakes were low. We had no choice but to go. It's not like home, these windy walkways to an endless stair, to our cold castles, castles in the air. It's not like home, these windy walkways to an endless stair, to our cold castles, castles in the air.
The quick sort of story about NEA is NEA was actually set up in 1981, based here in Newcastle upon Tyne. The brief sort of history before it is that in the mid-70s, Friends of the Earth ran a national day of action to get local Friends of the Earth group insulating the homes of pensioners. I think if you remember right, it was called Insulate a Pensioner. And a number of us who were involved in Friends of the Earth before we went to university thought that's a really good idea, very practical way of showing what you can do.
We do not have properties that people can afford to heat, and that will require a national impetus. It will require huge investment into our existing homes.
Get tested by government, how long we're going to be giving you money forever. So there's always this thing, no, if you give us it for 5 or 10 years, we'll have it solved by then, which is, the concept, we'll really focus it and lift people out of fuel poverty. The reality is society changes massively around you. Energy prices have gone up for a whole series of reasons. There's less money spent on social welfare now than it was 20, 30 years ago. So all of those factors mean there's still a huge job to do.
We now have millions of people, about 1 in 5, using prepay, pay-as-you-go meters. Now that can help people who are on low fixed budgets. However, up until now, those people have been paying a premium for that. And so very importantly, we've been trying to help protect those more vulnerable customers on low incomes so that they are certain they'll get a better deal from the energy industry.
I lived at this address from about 2009 until the beginning of 2011. I came here because there wasn't really much affordable housing at the time, and I was a single parent with my son was born in 2007, so in order to have a nicer flat, I sort of came to Byker. There was only one window which had the fantastic view of the Tyne and the bridges, and that was double glazed, but that was the only window in the whole place that was double glazed. So obviously that didn't help because the flat wasn't well insulated.
I moved out maybe a couple of years ago from my family house. When I moved out, I applied for and was granted in a residential building that was recently built for people who had disabilities and needed assistance in living independently.
Well, when I was a bit younger and I had my first child and I moved into my own house, my benefits got cut, and obviously with me being on prepayment meters, you have to top up your card and your key.
When I first moved into my flat 4 years ago, it was pay-as-you-go meter, so it was the top-up key and card, and I hated it because I grew up with parents who had the same thing, and they always had difficulties with it all the time due to lack of money.
There was something a bit demoralising about it, that you were having to pay for your electric on a key meter, because obviously the key meters, well, to me, in that time were associated with being poor. So it did feel like that every time you went to the shop. So I'd actually try and put as much on as possible so that I didn't have to go to the shop as much as possible or go at a certain time of day, that I wouldn't bump into anyone I knew.
I have anxiety, so I really struggle to go to the shops on my own, for example. And I had one local corner shop that I lived nearby that I was comfortable with. But unfortunately, they were really unreliable in the sense that sometimes their machines didn't work, sometimes their ATM machine didn't work, and just things like that. So in the end, after 4 years at least, I ended up giving up and having to go into town with friends and family members to top up instead.
It lasted less time than it was supposed to last. So with my money being cut, I couldn't afford to top up my key, and I had to go into emergency, and they charge you extra for that.
It just was very unfair that you're in a difficult situation, and it's made more difficult that you get the worst tariffs when you're actually in the worst position to pay for the higher tariffs.
It was like you would top up 20 quid, you would end up going in emergency after a week or so, and then you would try and top up again with £10 and you'd back to zero, and it's just an endless cycle of losing money and having to top up more than what you had beforehand because of that kind of charging you for nothing really, because you can't afford to put it on at the moment that you lose it.
I've had to press the emergency, and then I've got myself into trouble with it, and I had to find money, and I had to borrow money off my friends or family, but I didn't really have much, they didn't have much money either because they aren't well off.
It was horrible. Because you would have to pay for your gas and electric, it made that was your priority, especially when you've got a young child, to keep the roof over your head warm. So it meant that certain bills and certain debt that I had bailiffs knocking on my door. They sent letters through nearly every day. This was for some council tax arrears, and they actually even threatened that they'd been in my property.
Well, I got into a little bit of debt. Thankfully for me, that obviously sorted out my benefits quick enough so that I could pay it back off. But I got into about a good £100 worth of debt.
That winter I moved in, everything kind of broke, where I didn't end up with heating, which was an issue. I think it was stated that the boiler or the meter was put in faulty.
I topped up with £20 and I went on holiday, and I came back and my electricity was off. So even though I wasn't in the house and I wasn't using my electricity, I turned everything off, apart from my fridge. 20 quid had been spent really quickly, and I came back and it was gone.
For the most of December, it was just kind of not working at all, because for whatever reason, if someone came out, they said they couldn't do it, and they said someone would come back in a couple of days, and that just never happened. So it didn't really get fixed until New Year's after that, but that was still rather unpleasant.
I'm lucky because I've been taught how to make productive food. I make things that last a while. So I'm lucky in a way, because obviously if I didn't know how to do that, I may have had to choose between food and electricity.
It was a new building. The insulation wasn't the best. The walls are exceptionally thin, and I don't think British buildings in general are even prepared usually to deal with cold, or at least not as they used to. So I ended up like paying rent for a building I couldn't really live in a lot of the time during that winter because of just it wasn't working.
And I think companies definitely have a problem of picking and choosing how much they're going to charge you for things, which is really bad because people suffer a lot.
I don't think people are really taught how to deal with this when they could probably use it. And there was just a lot going on. I guess I was fairly lucky because there's always like staff in the building to at least try to help. But it still wasn't, well, it was certainly an interesting first experience independent living.
So I literally used to have such a level of anxiety that it, I ended up going to the doctors. I ended up with depression because it just made me feel physically sick. That I felt under threat. I thought I was going to go to prison. So it's quite hard coming back here talking about it because it like is it took it and I feel a lot for people who have maybe not got the opportunity to get out like I did, and that's why I'm here now to say this, because it is so wrong.
What would you do if you rented a private flat? What would you do if your income was low? What if you had to choose between just to live within your means? What would you think? What would you say? What would you do? What would you do if you couldn't pay your heating bills? What would you do to make sure your kids were warm? There are too many unprepaid cars who find their struggle through life is hard. What would you think? What would you say? What would you do? Could you live on benefits? Ooh, ba, 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 ooh. Could you feed a family? Ooh, ba, 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 ooh. Using your cash, ooh, ba, 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 ooh. That has to be proved. What would you do if you'd worked out a budget plan? So all expenses were paid with little left. And just as mealtime came around, find that the cooker had broken down. What would you think? What would you say? What would you do? What would you do with a future that has no hope? What would you do if you thought that no one cares? And there was nothing you could do to change the circumstance for you. What would you think? What would you say? What would you do?
The fascinating thing is that fuel poverty as a term and as an issue is very much a British thing. If you go to other countries, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, it doesn't exist to anything like the extent it does. It's a combination of very well insulated houses, dense urban areas where they use very low-cost district heating provided by the local authorities or arm's-length companies, and very progressive social welfare policies. Now, clearly all of those come at a cost. There's no such thing as a free lunch in the environment, so someone's got to pay. But it is possible to do it, if you invest properly.
Because sadly, we're not building enough new properties at higher energy efficiency standards, and we'll all be living for for the rest of our lives probably in the housing stock that exists now. So it's really important that we get that up to a much higher energy efficiency standard, and we can do that through a national insulation programme and heating improvements.
I keep you warm, I charge your phone. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. I bring you light in darkest night. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. I cook your food, I change the mood. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. I clean your clothes, and without those, you're gonna miss me when I'm gone. When I'm gone, gone. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. When I'm gone, when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. When I'm gone, when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. When I'm gone, when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. I've been misused, I've been abused. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. When you employ, I can destroy. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. I have the power, I have the drive. I'll keep you very much alive. But if you push me to the side, you're gonna miss me when I'm gone. Make no mistake, for goodness sake, you're gonna miss me when I'm gone. I am the key to what will be. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. I need your help, I need your care. I need you all to be aware, or there'll be times when I'm not there. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. I have to say that on that day, you're gonna miss me when I'm gone. So change your mind, or you will find you're gonna miss me when I'm gone. When I'm gone, when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. When I'm gone, when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. When I'm gone, when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. When I'm gone, when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone.
I pay our fuel bills. I have absolutely no idea what fuel tariff we're on.
I don't know what tariff I'm on. I know it's standard. And I am ashamed of myself in that I have never switched.
No.
No.
Yes. No, I don't. Not precisely, no.
Well, it started off fairly cheap, and then as the months go on, they sort of sneakily put another 20 quid on.
Well, I know that we pay 12p a unit.
Well,
I'm not absolutely sure. I'm on some sort of basic tariff, and I have been on that for about 6 years, I think. I don't know exactly how much it costs me. I have been trying to look into it.
And eventually we discovered that at the end of, because it's all done online, that at the bottom of your statement, it says if you change to this tariff, you would be so much a year better off. And that's what we did. And we were paying 18 pence a unit at the time, and we're now paying 12. But they don't tell you that. You've got to find it for yourself. We were on a cheap tariff which ended. It was 18 months or something, and it ended, and they didn't bother reminding us that it ended.
Yeah, oh yeah. She shops around, she does the Martin Money Saver bit, she does the what is the best tariff, moves us about. It was just that we had a complete nightmare with it for so long.
I have a smart meter. It's just been recently installed just before the summer, and I'm told that I can keep track of all sorts of things. I haven't actually got into it yet. On paper, I think it sounds as though it could be quite good that you can keep an eye on things, particularly when the weather gets colder. So it's yet to be tried and tested.
Yeah, we've had a smart meter fitted to our house, which was quite an event. But we're hoping that's been quite recent, so we're hoping that that's going to help us to rationalise the way in which we use fuel, look at energy, whether we use it.
I don't know what a smart meter is, no. Can you enlighten me?
Really, I'm very anti private ownership of basic resources such as fuel.
One gas company, one electric company. So everything is out and about, and I could understand one company would have the tariffs and they would have to tell me what they are because there's only one of them. And then I would be able to understand that better.
Yes, there may well be a cheaper tariff. I suppose I'm always balancing that with trying to find electricity supplies that offer good fuel environmentally.
You get emails about, swap now, this is the way to swap, and swap to this and swap to that. But it's so scary. I find it really scary. And I'm not computer illiterate at all. I just am terrified of the whole process. I'm sure I can get much cheaper stuff, but I don't know how to do it.
Elephant in the boiler room, blow, blow it away. Shelling out money as we consume, blow, blow it away. When the bills are going through the roof and your life downriver is sold, things seem less than weatherproof. When you're left out in the cold, elephant in the boiler room, blow, blow it away. Shelling out money as we consume, blow, blow it away. With 3 dozen firms to choose from, and the tariffs by the score, they dole out silver on meerkats as the wolf keeps knocking at your door. Elephant in the boiler room, blow, blow it away. Shelling out money as we consume, blow, blow it away. When you're caught with nought in your pocket and bills hit the deck like before, as soon as you are back in debt, you'll be paying more. Elephant in the boiler room, blow, blow it away. Shelling out money as we consume, blow, blow it away. They say we should make comparisons. You get what you ask for. But me, I am just bloody confused compared to what I was before. Elephant in the boiler room, blow, blow it away. Shelling out money as we consume, blow, blow it away. Elephant in the boiler room, blow, it away.
There are clear benefits to smart meters, but only if people know how to use them and to respond to the information that they can receive that will be generated. And I think that it's important that we have a clear message to people about how they can use the smart meters and what they won't do. So there are things that they can do which will end estimated bills that's driven so many people into debt, which has caused them to go onto more expensive tariffs. But I think we have to make sure that people understand what they won't do.
I want to be warm with plenty to wear, a double duvet away from cold air. We all need a dream, we all have a claim on simple food and shelter. We all need the same. I want to be warm, the sun shining in, windows filled with light, gold upon my skin. We all need a dream, we all have a claim on simple food and shelter. We all need the same. I want to be warm, safe and not afraid, money in my purse and all the bills paid. We all need a dream, we all have a claim on simple food and shelter. We all need the same. I want to be warm with friends calling by, enough food to share, a belly full of pie. We all need a dream, we all have a claim on simple food and shelter. We all need the same. We all need a dream, we all have a claim on simple food and shelter. We all need the same.
This house and another couple of houses that were built recently use a ground source heat pump, and that sort of works a bit like a reverse refrigerator in that it takes the sort of heat from the ground and extracts it through a heat exchanger at very low levels and feeds it into the heating system, so that provides all the heating and hot water for these houses.
So the ground source heat pump, it basically runs on electricity, but the only electricity it uses is to run the pump, which pumps a refrigerant down into the ground and then back up, and a small unit extracts the heat. So the running costs of a heat pump are quite low. It's actually 400% efficient, so every 1 kilowatt of electricity put in, you get the equivalent of 4 out.
The glass window is to do with the orientation of the building, and that window is facing south, so that allows solar gain. As the sun shines into that house, that space warms up, And behind that there is a thick concrete wall which acts as a heat sink. So during the day the concrete wall absorbs heat and then it's released slowly throughout the evening and beyond.
To ventilate a house using fans and the like, you often use quite a lot of heat. A lot of heat that's built up in the house, a lot of heat from your ground source heat pump or whatever your heat source is, and a lot of that insulated space goes out the window. So a heat recovery system takes the heat that you're going to heat from the air which you're going to extract, takes all of the heat out and then lets the stale air go out, and then takes that heat and puts it into the air which is coming in. So it kind of reclaims the heat which is embedded in the air which is going out of the house.
I think, 10 years ago, green ideas were seen as quite cranky and out there, and that they've just become more mainstream, more normal, and it's not such a big deal now to want to use alternative technology, because it's not really alternative anymore, it's become normal.
I think the more people involved in it, the more cost effective it becomes. It costs quite a lot to drill one borehole, because you've got to get a huge drilling rig on site, but once you've got that rig there, you might as well drill 5, 6, 10. So there's definitely economies of scale to be had. I know there's quite a lot of this goes on with the local authorities in Scotland. Technologies like ground source heat pumps are still relatively expensive, whereas insulation is pretty standard and pretty inexpensive, and the payback from insulation is significantly higher. So again, insulating buildings is relatively cheap, it's relatively affordable, and it's also the most efficient way to keep places warm and save energy.
I think we can be proud at NEA that we have great staff, we have experienced people who are working with people out in communities, we have a network of members, thousands and thousands of people engaged in trying to help people in fuel poverty. But what we need to ensure is that those people are properly resourced, and that's going to require some more action from government.
And when we started up NEA, we always had this concept. It would be small, nimble-footed, a small central organisation, and the service delivery would be by empowering local community groups to take action themselves.
I think that quite often the messages that NEA is trying to get across, important as they are, sometimes don't hit the mark. So we need creative ways and innovative ways of telling our story. So I really, really like the fact that we've got young people in community groups who are helping us tell this story, and can use their imagination and their experience to get the message across to a much wider group of people.
See the red brick terraces of Britain run across a pleasant land, and the prefabs flow row on row like the corduroy of working men. Some were built 100 years and more, and they've never been replaced. They are drafty and damp and always cramped. It's a national disgrace. It should be that every person living in the UK has a home that's dry and warm inside. That's a price I'd gladly pay. Poor maintenance and insulation, and in great need of repair. Yet we pay more for our energy. That's a cross we shouldn't bear. Damp walls and rotting windows, or an old and leaky roof, lead to pressure on the NHS. When will governments face the truth? It should be that every person living in the UK has a home that's and warm inside, that's a price I'd gladly pay. See the red brick terraces of Britain all across our pleasant land, and the prefabs flow row on row like the corduroy of working man. Some were built 100 years and more, and they've never been replaced. They are drafty and damp and always cramped. It's a national disgrace. It should be that every person living in the UK has a home that's dry and warm inside. That's a price I'd gladly pay. There are families trapped who need our help. Now it's time to have your say. Put an end to all fuel